Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. For those who have been here with us, you know the rules and you know the game. We are basically interviewing candidates here in the Portland metropolitan area, the largest city in the state of Oregon, and and actually up to June 5, you'll be seeing all kinds of future leaders, if you will, and so you got to pick and choose. And so we're going to be doing that. And for those who have already been here, you know pretty well know what that's all about. You got John right here. John's been out there knocking on doors and trying to figure out what's going on in the city of Portland, and he's come up with some ideas. He's got a little report that he's going to make with. John, what do we got?
Well, we are in the meet the candidates portion of the show, and it's been really, really exciting. Getting to know these candidates both personally and then like through their website, and seeing how they address problems from their own perspective. It's really been insightful, and we're trying to get everybody here kind of on the same page, and we do have to respect like differences of opinions, and so just having this opportunity to listen to these different opinions and understand that like everybody wants to make the city better. Right.
One point before you get beyond the other point, I fail to say, this is community television.
Right.
This is not commercial television.
Right.
This is community television. Understand, we're dealing with the bulk of the folks to educate them as to who these leaders are going to be possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And so that's like it's real valuable, and for our guests, continue sending in questions for these candidates. And also, if you guys have any candidates that you'd like to see on the show, please reach out. We'd like to do that. I know next week we're going to be transitioning into getting some more of the county candidates on the agenda. Yeah. But today we're going to continue with we've got a pretty wide spectrum of candidates. We have a mayoral candidate, we have a city council candidate, and we have a state representative candidate. So we've got like 3 of the 4 main governments. I guess we're only missing the county and metro. But the next show on the 19th is going to be pretty much county commission candidates. So
all right.
Jumping into sort of the rumor section of what's been going on here, recently 350 PDX had a climate event that ended up drawing 24 candidates from city council candidates. It's a grassroots organization that's dedicated to climate justice. A large number of them pledged their support for the Clean Energy Fund, a business tax that's benefiting climate-related community projects. That is something that we talked about a few weeks ago, where Oregon Public Broadcast was wanting to publish the names of the people that are paying the tax, and the current city council has actually sued to stop the release of that. And so we've always talked a lot about transparency in government and everything like that. So that's a really interesting development. On the fundraising tip, Dan Ryan, who was a guest on the last show, who he had a really modest start to his fundraising. In the last week, he raised $30,000. That's a lot for a city council race.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's been really good. And Renee Gonzalez, mayor's race is going to be very, very interesting. Renee Gonzalez has raised about $100,000, and then the 2 commissioners.
Now, how does that work for that $100,000? How much money is that's it? That's the only money he's going to be spending?
Well, the mayor's race is a little bit different. I believe he's. I'm not sure of this. I've heard it go both ways. But I do think that he's going to be participating in the small donors program, because he does periodically give.
Which means
that for the mayor, the small donors program is an opportunity for the city to match donations. The citizens' donation.
1 for 1?
9 to 1 at the lowest scale.
That's $1 million.
So like at a well, yeah, but there's caps on how much. There's caps on how much the city will.
Who picks up that tab? You and me.
I think that would be you. 'Cause you have the bigger tax bill, Bruce.
Oh, gee whiz. Taxpayers. Wow.
And so, so far, like on the city council races, the first level match is 40,000, and so far we do have a number of candidates that have qualified and received that 40,000 match, including Candace Avalos, Timur Endur, and Steph Routh in District 1. Jesse Cornett, Angelita Morillo, Steve Novick, and Robin Yee in District 3, and Olivia Clark and Chad Likens in District 2. Interesting thing is no candidates from District 2 have yet qualified. The lead fundraiser in that race is actually Mariah Hudson, and we are working on getting her onto the show.
Okay.
With that being said, do you want to move to the interviews, or do you want to talk
to the
about
candidates?
Let's do it. Let's get Keith
I'll
Wilson
get you
over
one
here.
real quick, right? Keith, come on.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it. All right, you bet.
Welcome aboard.
Nice to see you, John.
Nice to meet you.
This is Portland royalty, if you will, with Bruce here and John. This is an honor.
Well, so this is Keith Wilson. He's running for mayor, City of Portland. You guys can find his platform on keithwilsonformayor.com. We do have a graphic up that should be showing that shortly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you for coming.
Pleasure.
What are 3 things you'd like the voters to know about you?
All right. I always start with my purpose and why I'm running. And I always start with, hello, everybody. My name is Keith Wilson, and I'm a candidate for mayor, and my focus is to deliver real change for Portland. That change begins with ending unsheltered homelessness within the first 12 months of my administration. I accomplished that by opening up a network of nighttime emergency shelters, and a number enough to care for every single person on our street. Unsheltered homelessness are those that are living in tents and RVs, in boats, in cars, in campers. They're all people who need help. They're living in unsanitary, unsafe conditions that we should not be allowing anybody to be in. In a community like Portland, one of the richest cities in the world, in one of the richest countries in the world, we've absolutely failed. Every day we allow that to continue, and we can't revitalize our community until we've provided that basic need. But the 3 things are where I started from. I grew up in North Portland. So you and I were just talking about Vanport. I grew up next to, it's called New Columbia, but the Columbia Villa. We were poor.
Oh, yeah, the Villa.
Yeah.
We weren't, I think
And
you
know it very well. Well, I
was the number 4 was your bus?
It was the 75.
Okay.
And it would not be on time always, which is, I got to work on that as far as a mayor as well. I had a great upbringing. There were 7 of us in a 900 square foot 2-bedroom home.
Cozy.
It was tight, but it was a great upbringing. I mean, we had a lot of great friends, had a wonderful time, great parents, worked hard. They worked 7 days a week. But for some reason, it was interesting. I would always find myself playing at the University of Portland because it was up the street, and I would play with the basketball team and just ran that campus, and it gave me and instilled that desire of getting a college education. So it's the first in my family. And then I went on to get a master's degree as well. After I left after I graduated my undergraduate at Oregon State, I just picked up stakes and I said I want to live in New York City. And I started interviewing, and I was really fortunate after a lot of hardships to work at 30 Rock. I was in a brand new program in primetime sales for NBC. Had a wonderful time, and then picked up stakes and lived overseas for 2 years and was in New Zealand interviewing for a network television job. And I realized if I take this job, I'm going to be away from Portland for another decade or more. And so I just picked up stakes again, and I came home. Started to work for my father's luggage delivery company at a small package delivery company. And I just dug in and started learning how to operate that business, and I merged businesses and I grew. We have 7 service centers now throughout Oregon and Washington. We are one of the most innovative carriers in the nation. We have a artificial intelligence system that helps as far as our driver safety. We rarely have accidents.
And that's Titan Freight?
Freight.
Is that the same name that your dad came up with? Or
No,
did you rebrand
I
it?
merged businesses, developed our products, created the services, the websites, all of those things as small business. I mean, when you're a small business owner, you are everywhere from the CEO to the janitor. And it's that continuum, you do everything. So you really learn everything. But now I've grown it, And I'm happy to say that we've removed all fossil fuels from Oregon, so the first carrier to do so. We have the safest record on road as well as workforce safety. And now we have the first fleet of all electric vehicles in Oregon, if not the Northwest. And so we've achieved some extraordinary advancements. And in this last 2 years, we've been awarded National Innovator of the Year for the last 2 years and National Clean Fleet of the Year nominee. So we've reached this real achievement of being one of the best carriers. But then with all that, about 6 years ago, I looked around at my city, and John, I just don't even recognize Portland anymore. I mean, you grew up here.
Yeah.
And so I keep thinking, what are we continuing to make the same failed policies and the same failed leadership, trying to do the same thing over and over again? When you're in business, you try something, you fail fast. If it's not going to work, you improve it, and then you try again. And I feel like we're doing the same thing over and over again here.
Well, one thing that you did touch on is that it sounds like you've created like living wage jobs.
Absolutely.
And so, I've been a small business owner myself, and one business was construction, and I was able to create living wage jobs. And then my last business was a dispensary where I couldn't really afford to pay like living wage jobs,
Yeah.
but it was more than minimum. But can you? I don't know if there anything you can share on that, but it's like it's a beautiful thing when you
Yep.
can just when you're somebody comes in puts their time in with you, and
That's
then just
right.
knowing like this weekend, the kid's going to go have a baseball game, and the parent's able to afford whatever is
Yep.
associated with that.
But it's a learning curve, though. I bet, John, when you started your first business, you probably tried to pay a reasonable wage or maybe a little bit less. And when you do that, you found out that you had turnover. People would leave. And then you keep bringing in all these inexperienced people, and you keep having mistakes or safety issues. And then you realize, okay, I'll pay them a reasonable wage, but I'll fill their bucket so full that they're so busy and they don't accomplish their job at the end of the day. And then they feel disenfranchised because they don't feel like they've been successful, and then they leave. And so what experience gains is you pay a person a fair wage for a fair day's work. You create far-reaching yet achievable goals so they can leave every day and know that they participated, and they're not being overwhelmed. And then you don't have a workforce that's working unsafe, right? You want to keep the community, not only your business associates safe, but you want to keep that next circle safe as well. And so experience gets you that real purview of you care for people, you create solid key performance indicators that they have input on designing and developing. And then we have a culture at Titan where I am so impressed, and they know exactly what my needs are. They know exactly what I expect of them. But in turn, they can trust me because I'm always going to be there, and I take care of them from a wage, the benefits, the retirement. And then the business has a great culture where it's just really running extremely well. That culture is vital. And let's tie it back to Portland. We've lost that culture in Portland, right?
Yeah.
So you think about, okay, can we trust our leaders? And we can't right now. The police are so disenfranchised. We don't trust the police to do a proper job. They don't trust the leaders and our council to have their back. And without that, how do we ask the police officers to go into the community and to trust the community members? And the police officers know every single person in the community by name. And so we have this dysfunctional kind of relationship going on. And we have, in a workforce, John, you've got to care for every team member in your company or in your community, so then they can care for everybody else as well.
Yeah, that's why I kind of pressed on that, because I think that experience is really, really valuable in like setting up a campaign.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it's like, basically it's like starting up a business also. You need all those elements. And then also, running a city. And, with you as the new mayor, you're going to have to put in, your organizational culture. And so seeing that you have that in that background, and it's not just going to be something that you're doing on the fly, is going to serve you really well.
I think so too.
Going forward. So I guess you did touch on homelessness a little bit, ending that in 12 months.
Right.
But what would your priorities? What are your priorities going to be, and why did you choose those?
Well, let me give you the arc of time on that. So about 6 years ago, having success as a business, look at my city and we're really surrounded by abject poverty, people living on the street. And so what I started to do is I have the ability to travel a lot. I speak a lot around the nation and the world, and I would be invited. And every time I would go somewhere, whether it's New York City or New Orleans or Gulfport or Rockford, Illinois, I would meet with the mayor. I would meet with the county commissioner. I would meet with federal officials. And I would go to communities that had ended in shelter and homelessness. Because it's all, in business. I'm not extraordinary. I just know, go talk to the people who've already succeeded, find out what they've done with the challenges. And I say, you always go visit the Bobs, the best of the best. You never go visit the Wows, the worst of the worst. Right. So I started working with these community members, and we started creating a plan. How do we end in shelter and homelessness in Portland? And we're just copying these wonderful, successful individuals in other cities. And in that arc of time, 6 years now, I've got a group of 10 national leaders that are on my team. The mayor of Boise, Mike Lindbergh, our Commissioner Lindbergh, who ended on shelter homelessness with Mayor Clark, is on my team. Federal officials, President Obama's Assistant Secretary to Reduce Homelessness is on my team. And we created what's a group called Shelter Portland. And then we started opening shelters in Portland. And so we started caring for community members. And today, here's what's extraordinary. Union Gospel Mission has a shelter at Southeast Powell and like 102nd.
Okay.
And sheltering 45 people at night. The Church of Nazarene is the host. Shelter Portland provides some financial support. We are sheltering people for $15.55 per person per night. A Safe Rest Village, $189 per person. So I keep telling people, we don't need financial capital to end on shelter and homelessness. We need social capital. We need our community to come together and just say, we're going to care for everybody. But we need to do it in a low-cost, flexible, immediate fashion. And all my team members have determined what happens and what worked around the nation for 100 years is nighttime emergency shelters. Just set them up at the number that we need. Think of it like an earthquake. When you have an earthquake, you don't step back and think about things.
Right.
You jump right into the disaster recovery. You flex up to the needs you need. When we flex up, we immediately remove every tent, every RV, every boat, every makeshift shelter overnight, and we care for the individual. Now, if they want to stay in our community, workforce development. We start figuring out what their needs are. If they don't, we start helping them with reunification, a bus ride back home, whatever it is. But we set the stage, and nobody lives on the street tonight. And that has to be done within months, and that's what I'll do as soon as I become mayor in Portland.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think and just in me speaking with people, I do know that people have been fed up with the status quo.
Right.
And it's just sometimes when you're in a challenging when one is in a challenging situation, you start reacting to the emergency and the people that are around,
right,
to craft your solution. And so I do know that a lot of viewers appreciate the idea of a fresh set of eyes,
right,
to look at the problem and come up with proactive solutions.
I agree. I call it kind of like, as an outsider, the beauty is I'm sitting out and I'm looking, and we are all watching this. I'm sitting in the seat, and everybody at home that's reading the Oregonian, we're all sitting and saying, that's not rational. What we're doing is not rational. And this week was a perfect example. The mayor and council just finally said we're not going to have our daytime camping ban. And they asked me, well, what do you think? I said, well, we shouldn't have a camping ban. We should not have any camping. We shouldn't be banning camping for 12 hours a day. We shouldn't have camping for 24 hours a day. What are we doing by not caring for those individuals? Because it's harming not only the unsheltered, it's harming our housed and our businesses. When you look at our businesses downtown, we're at 30% vacancy rate in our downtown core. We have the highest vacancy rate in the nation now. And the only way we start to help out our communities and businesses and jobs and bring them back, right? Those jobs are gone, is we just care for our community, improve livability, help and reduce the public safety emergency we have. Our officers are overwhelmed. I love data. Our officers would respond to priority call. If somebody was holding you up or you were in harm's way, 10 years ago, they would be at your beck and call within 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Today, a priority call is answered in 24 minutes.
I'm a downtown resident. Me and my family have been down there my entire life, 48 years. As a dispensary owner, I remember, and this was during the pandemic. We got burglarized, and so I couldn't call 911. I had to call the non-emergency number. And I'm just sharing my experience with the folks, is that, it took an hour and 15 minutes. So this is like they're in the middle of the business day. So I literally had to I wasn't able to open that day, but I had to keep an employee there to be on hold.
Yes.
And,
goodness gracious.
and so we finally made the call in, we got it, got it answered. And then so the police officer calls me back. They didn't come. She just had me take pictures and send it to her, and that was the police report. And
any follow-up or follow-through on that?
No.
All right. So we've normalized camping in our town. We hand out tents instead of providing basic shelter. We've normalized open drug use. We have people that are lying on the street prostrate, and we're driving by, and we don't have sobering centers. Basic life-saving measures in our town. We've normalized property crime, where you as a business owner, you'll make a call and an officer won't respond. And here's the point. I hear from business owners that aren't even filing reports anymore because they know nothing's going to come from it. And so I keep going, people, I want everybody to know it is not normal in Philadelphia. It's not normal in Boston. It's not normal in Boise. And as mayor, it's not going to be normal in Portland. The things I'm professing are just basic things that you find in fully functioning cities all over the nation. What's happening in Portland is not normal. John, what you experienced is not. But my first thing, end unsheltered homelessness. Here's one of the root causes. In business, you always want to find what's the bottleneck, what's the root cause. You fix it, you move on, you find the next one. It's a virtuous cycle. 50% of all arrests in Portland are of the unsheltered. The unsheltered population is only 1% of our population, yet it's consuming 50% of our police work. End unsheltered homelessness, address the bottleneck, and you immediately reduce the overwhelmed nature from our police, our firefighters, and our EMT. And then we start to see what else do we need to fix from that? What needs are next? And then we can really start improving the business climate that you're addressing, right?
Right.
So you can feel good about running your business, and you can. It's hard having a small business, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's like staffing is a challenge. Inflation probably, in my opinion, inflation rears its head worse on the lowest income people. And so asking, somebody, for example, to come in and work in a dispensary for $17 an hour, you need to make that a good experience because they have alternatives.
Yeah.
And, they don't. What they were signing up for the dispensary was to sell cannabis products, not to be like a security guard.
Absolutely.
And keep people out and deal with all the consequences of being a security guard. So like one of the things I've noticed about downtown, and again this is just my opinion, is that like when traditionally the urban core was like 60% women. Everything from like just the support staff to like retail workers and everything like that. I feel like it's reversed now because of like the public safety issue.
Absolutely. Yep.
Where it's like, I don't want to go and work in a coffee shop downtown. I'd rather work at one out in Lake Oswego where I don't have homeless people or people with mental illness that come into the business and I have to deal with.
Right.
And so it really, for me, it speaks for itself right there, the way that our population balance in downtown has changed.
That's very interesting. I never thought about that, but it makes perfect sense. It's what you just said is you clarified people feel unsafe. And if people feel unsafe, they're not going to bring their families, they're not going to bring their businesses into the best city in the world. But we have to work on that, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to address all those things.
Okay. Well, so besides money, how can our viewers and voters help you?
Well, I'm being very clear. Change is on the ballot this year. If you're a voter, it is absolutely important that if improving livability and revitalizing our community is important to you, I ask, look at the candidates that are out there. We have 7 months now before the election. Make sure that they articulate exactly what they're going to do. If a candidate says we're going to build more housing, that takes 10 years. The emergency needs to be addressed in 10 days. And I applaud that. And we're going to build more housing. But we have an emergency today, so make sure that that person is answering what you need. I'm asking for our individuals. I'm asking for our community support. I have a plan, and I've worked on it for years. I have a group of leaders that are helping me with the plan that have records of success. I have a record of success, and I'm asking for people to join me in that support. KeithWilsonForMayor.com is my website. I need as much support. Invite me to your house parties. Invite me to your community meetings. Certainly consider donating, because the donations allow us to have a media campaign to reach out to the greater community to show that I've got new ideas. Yes, I'm an outsider. I recognize that, but I'm not an outsider without a resume, and that resume is chock-a-blocked with success. And I want to bring that success to Portland to get us ready for this next decade that we have got to do. But first and foremost is we care for everybody in the community, and we care for them immediately.
Awesome. Well, I guess I will just end it with my kind of my normal question. Do you have a favorite restaurant in Portland?
It's like in every, let's talk about 20 and 22. So when I was a kid, Spaghetti Factory, and it's still rocking. And I just don't think you can walk past that. And my kids would say it's all about grilled cheese sandwiches. And I would say now, today, my wife and I, she and I love Matador. It just opened where we're at near. It's such a nice, casual place, and we love it. And so I'd say that's my go-to right now.
It's open late. That's what I do like about the late night happy hour over there. I usually go to the one over on Burnside. But,
so yeah, it's nice.
All right, folks. Well, this was Keith Wilson. Thank you a lot for your time.
It was a pleasure. Really pleasure. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right.
And we'll bring on our next guest.
Ooh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the magic.
There we go.
That's all of our.
We got it.
There you go.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
And I brought my notes because you asked such great questions.
Well, thank you. I thought I feel like you can. I like notes and preparation, but you can speak from your heart, folks. This is our next guest. This is Rex Burke. You can. Yeah.
Okay,
Wow,
I'll leave
this
it
is community TV, so we're real informal here.
I've been here before.
Okay.
Okay.
Rex Burkholder. He's a candidate for Portland City Council District 2. His website is here on the graphic, but you can find it at rexforpdx.com. Welcome to the show.
That's it. Yeah. Hey, well, thank you for having me in.
Yeah. Well, okay. What are 3 things that you'd like the voters to know about you?
Well, I think one of the key things I'd say is that in my history here in Portland, 40-some years, I've always been engaged and involved in the community. And there's always things to do. There's always great people to work with, always problems to help solve. Mm-hmm. And that kind of passion, I tried to retire. I lasted 3 months after I was on the Metro Council. So that kind of passion and excitement about making change happen is still there. I'm still excited about that.
How long were you on the Metro Council?
I was on 12 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, representing Northeast Portland.
Okay.
And parts of Northwest. It's a much bigger district.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people. The other part is that I do get things done, and usually, or always, by working with other people. So I started the Bicycle Transportation Alliance back in the 90s to try to get streets safer for cycling. I worked on the Metro Council to do things like getting climate change integrated into our planning, land use planning, and transportation, but also passing the bond measure to redo the zoo by natural areas and parks and all those times, a lot of fun activities to do. Since I left Metro, I've been working as a board member of Unite Oregon, which is an immigrant and refugee economic development advocacy leadership organization that just is amazing to work with the new Portlanders and be part of helping that out. And then the one thing I want my epitaph, if I have a gravestone, it'd be Outdoor School for All.
Okay.
And I led the effort to restore funding so all kids in Oregon get that week experience of science when they're in 6th or 5th grade.
Yeah. I've very rarely written letters to the editor, but I did actually, like 23 years ago, they were talking about getting rid of Outdoor School. And I went to college out on the East Coast, and my sense of like understanding, we'll call it like being a steward of the environment, was different than people from other parts of the country. And
because you went to outdoor school.
I went to outdoor school. Yeah. That's that becomes like a part of our culture.
Yeah.
It's like I remember being taught like erosion. Other places you're not being taught about
soil, plants,
recycling, and so we actively, it's like I remember just kind of being blown away with how we dealt with milk cartons back in the there were paper cartons back in the day, and you'd like fold them up and then you'd put them all into one. So it was just, it became a part of like what it means to be like Oregonian, just like
Yeah,
taking
for sure.
English or math or anything like that. And so, and then I also noticed, definitely speaking from the Black community's perspective, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to go out into the middle of the forest. Like your mom's not wanting to take you out into the middle of the forest, So it's forcing people to expose themselves to another part of a culture is, I think it's always just really valuable.
Yeah, it was one of the steering committee on that campaign was Greg Woolley, who runs African American Outdoors.
Yeah.
And the stories he told about how the kids who went to outdoor school and the kids who didn't go out to outdoor school, how they perceived and interacted with the environment was totally different. And he was a 100% supporter on that effort. And it's all kids. And the same thing. We go to Klamath Falls, and we talked about leadership and learning how to collaborate with other kids and learning how the world works. And so Klamath Falls, you think they didn't want to talk about the environment.
Right.
They want to talk about giving their kids opportunities and exposure to new ideas and the skills to deal with all the tough things they have to deal with in the world.
I like it.
Yeah. No. So that's like I said. Write that on my gravestone, and I'll be happy.
Okay,
But not too soon. Not too soon.
You got work to do at City Council.
Okay.
So with that being said, what are your priorities going to be? And why?
Oh, well, I think the biggest thing is we are talking about a revolutionary shift in the government.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have years for that to work? No, I think and this is one thing that got me interested in this is because at Metro we had a very similar government. We had a 7-member council, and we hired a manager that ran the organization. And so that council had to figure out how to work together, how to set goals, how to share and trust, right? Because it's really hard to understand everything that Metro does. They do the solid waste, they run the Performing Arts Center, they have the zoo, they do land use planning. It's like your head blows up if you try to do all that. So you learn to trust who else has knowledge and who can you work with and find a way to work with everybody. So that's what I am excited about bringing is it's to that table is to say, how do we organize ourselves so that we deliver for the people? The other piece is also from Metro, because I was running a small nonprofit, and I go there and we have a $500 million budget at Metro. Now the city of Portland is $7 billion, right? And you go like, well, how do we decide how to spend that money? And it comes back to, and I think your previous guest was talking about it too. It's like it's very much a business. What are you trying to achieve? What's the most effective way to get there? And what are the trade-offs you play? The new form of government, I think, is really exciting to me because the previous council, because they were managers or they are managers, they only hear from the departments that they operate, that they oversee. Right? We need more money. We need more money for this, and they don't see how it connects to everything else. So the new council, if it's organized well, I think we'll be able to look holistically at the city, and not just the city bureaus too. And this is a key thing, I think, is collaboration with other players. Okay, you got the private sector, you got community, but also you have Portland State University, Mount Hood Community College, Portland Community College, the school districts, county, and all these other players. And how do they make up the city?
State also,
right? They're part, and the state.
Yeah.
I mean, the state's going to talk about a giant freeway expansion.
Well,
Yeah,
and on my end, they're having trouble, maintaining what they have already. It's like graffiti's all over the freeways, signs are covered, and so they do have a bit of a responsibility for.
Well, quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot, and so there's that tension. But so how do you start becoming part of that broader discussion and not just looking inward and at your own navel and that we have to worry about the housing bureau or we have to worry about the sewer, the solid waste. How do we connect those pieces? And I forgot Metro. How do I forget Metro? They have to work with.
Yeah.
But again, that kind of, and in being at Metro, I recognize the value of people sitting around the table and working together. And it's just not the council, it will be all the other bodies out there. And then the private sector. I mean, where do the jobs come from, right? Where do the revenues come from to pay for things like schools and everything else we need?
Right, definitely. And then I'll just kind of I'll kind of expand on that a little bit.
Sure.
If you don't want to answer this one, that's fine. But
what's my favorite restaurant?
Oh well, no, not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
But what would be in an ideal world if you had a perfect city council and a perfect mayor? What would be a first piece of legislation.
I'd retire.
Yeah, well, okay, there it is.
It counts on there.
There it
You know, I don't need to work that hard. Well, you know, obviously housing's got to be at the top, you know, a big one. And it's not just unsheltered people, right? When you look at the people who are rent burdened and are struggling to make their payments. Let me get rid of that thing. Started buzzing at me. You know, struggling with that. It's like 40% of the people are paying up to 50% of their income for rent. And so they're doubling up, they're, you know, doing things that we don't see. And I moved here when housing was affordable. And you know why? Because it was as Donald Trump would say, it was a shithole city, right? You know, I lived 10 blocks from here.
Yeah.
And it was 75% poverty, 50% African American because of the history of racism in the city, and a subsidy to get white people out of the city, right? Go live in East County, you know, and we'll build big freeways and get you out of here. And you know, then, as you know, the history here. You know, we recovered and did a great job. We actually led the country in terms of urban reclamation. But, you know, we didn't think what's going to happen when all of a sudden the house I bought for $25,000, and I didn't get this money, but I saw it sold again recently for $1.2 million. And it was this old farmhouse that I hope they fixed the basement walls because they were falling in when I sold it. You know, I didn't have the money to replace the whole foundation. But, you know, but then we had that, there was an opportunity for us to step in and say, we should save some of these properties for long term. And that's tough to do now. The prices are higher. It's very difficult. But again, we need places where people can own their homes, but also rent at a rate that's reasonable. So there's a big piece there we need to be thinking about too, in addition to saying, okay, how do we provide the services and places for people who are, you know, who've lost their house because they couldn't make a health care payment? Or, you know, and there are a lot of folks out there who are, we don't see them. You know, we see the ones that have problems, but we don't see the people who are just day to day. They're going to a job, but they sleep in the car at night.
Right.
You know, so that's obviously a very big one. And I think I hit the collaboration and structures. Those are the three things in answer to your questions.
Okay. And I haven't asked, did I ask you how voters can help you?
Not yet.
But, okay. Well, besides money, because we can't ask for money on here, but besides money, how can voters help you in your race?
Well, the first thing is teach me. You know, and this, I've already heard from a lot of people saying, I want to talk to you about trees and the tree ordinance. I want to talk to you about I'm trying to remember the name of it, the welcoming east side, something, you know, about
East County Rising? Or,
no, this is trying to encourage more development in the east side, inner east side. You know, and then so people talking about that, talking about the siting of the tank farms and what we need to do to make that sure that's safe. I've had people talk to me about the freeway expansion, about participatory budgeting. So what's really been cool is people are teaching me. So if you have an issue, which one do I look at? I'm trying to remember, see which ones look at me. Yeah. Give me a call. And
can they get in touch with you on your website?
If they go to the website, my phone number's on there, my email's on there. Call me up and say, hey, you know, I have something I care about. I want to talk to you about it. That's really important because it is a very complex organism, and you can't know everything about it. And people, you know, telling me what they care about is a way I learn. So that's one of them. I'm going to turn the page over.
Okay.
The other one is get involved. I mean, not you know, my campaign, sure, it'd be great. Come volunteer. But the other part is, this city has gone from a really bad situation in the past to becoming one of the best places in the country to live. And I still think, despite our problems, it is still one of the best places to live. And it's almost 100% because citizens had proposed ideas to let's do something different. Creating Metro, that was a citizen idea. You know, doing the parks, the first parks levies that were done. Mike Hauk with the Audubon Society at the time, it was his idea. The bicycle stuff, you know, it was me and a bunch of guys who got, you know, and women got together and said, we shouldn't be killed just for riding a bicycle. What can we do to change things? And that's exciting. Friends of Trees, you know, it started the same time the BTA started, you know, Richard Seidman right over just across the street. Yeah. I mean, that was citizen involvement, you know, and I'm so excited about that. And that's why I'm thrilled to be part of that world. And so get involved. And the last one, if you do live in District 3, which is mostly Southeast Portland, I'd love to have your vote. But give me a call. Let's talk about what the issues are.
Excellent. And before we let Rex go here, I always ask this because I like to find out different restaurants in different parts of the city. Rex, do you have a favorite restaurant?
Okay, the best nachos
Yes, please tell me.
in the city is the Low Tide Lounge on Southeast Belmont.
Okay. Low Tide.
Yeah. And
Like in the 30s, I think? Or?
it's 21st
Okay.
or so. The 21st doesn't go through, but it's just past 20th on Belmont.
Gets
And
weird.
they make don't order the big one.
Okay.
Unless you have a party of friends.
Okay.
Because it's great. That's our go-to when it's like, okay, we don't want to cook, Lydia. Let's go out. And we go down and get nachos and play a game of cribbage.
All right, I'm going to have to put that one on the list.
It's good. Yeah.
All right, folks, this was Rex Burkholder, Portland City Council candidate for District 3. You can find his contact and more info at rexforpdx.com.
.com.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you very much. That's
And
great.
now we have our next guest. Austin Daniels is coming in. Thank you, Rex. I
Don't
appreciate
treat
it.
him so nice.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
John, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right, folks, this is our next guest here. This is Austin Daniels, and we're actually we try to get candidates from all the races because every level of government affects the way that we live. And so here we have Austin Daniels. He's a candidate for House District 46.
Yes, 46.
Great. And you can find his website on the graphic, but it's austinfororegon.com. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are 3 things you want the voters or our viewers to know about you?
3 things. This is going to be like a smear of information, so it'll probably be more
Do
than
it.
3. But
Do it. Go for it.
So my name's Austin Daniel. I'm running for House District 46, which is a pretty large chunk in Southeast Portland. I'm running as an NAV, which is a non-affiliated voter, but don't get me wrong, I've always voted democratically my entire life. I'm a liberal at heart. I'm a gay person of color. And so it's nothing against Democrats. It's more strategic that I am trying to skip the Democratic primary, which will guarantee that I'm on the ballot in November. But I mean, it has its pros and cons because the majority of voters, they really only care about the president, and then they just go down the list on local government and just vote for whoever's in their party. And so I do have a lot of work in terms of outreach and trying to get to the Democrats to know who it is that I am, because otherwise they're just going to vote for whoever wins the Democratic primary. But I guess I'll talk about like where I'm from and everything,
Yeah,
and
please.
kind of my political journey and why I'm running or I guess I already said why I'm doing an NAV, but I guess more about the moderate point of view, because I consider myself a political moderate now. But I'm an Oregonian. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, and then I moved to Portland in 2005. So I've been here for about 19 years. And I went to PSU, PCC, massage school, and I graduated from the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine. And technically, I'm a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, but I'm very modest. I don't really want people to call me a doctor.
Okay.
And I'm still in the licensure process, so I'm not licensed for acupuncture yet. But I've run a really successful massage practice, and so I'm a healer for the last 15 years. And I'm a very deeply spiritual person, energetically connected. And let's see, I've attended 9.5 years of very progressive, liberal, woke Portland colleges. But like, I really feel like over the last 8 years or so that the political climate has really shifted. I think that my Democratic Party has gone from being moderate to going a little bit on the far left, and I went with them. I was all about it. I knew it was extremely well intended. And but there was a point where I think it was about around the pandemic time where I kind of got a little propagandized, and I was a bit more divisive than I realized. I started going online and identifying people on my Facebook who had listed themselves as Republican. And these are people in my life who I knew that they were genuinely good people. In my heart, I was kind of blinded by propaganda and decided to just kind of virtue signal at them, chew them out for being Republican, accusing them of being racist, even though they weren't, being like, how could you vote for Donald Trump, or things like that. And even when they had, pretty logical or rational defenses, it was politically convenient for me to ignore that. And, one of my friends who is he's a white guy, really gentle person that I sang with in choir when I was in high school. And he ended up marrying a Mexican woman. And he's like, how could I be racist? I married a Mexican. And I had the audacity of accusing him of committing a microaggression, that he was fetishizing a Mexican woman in order to get away with being a racist. And it's just like, where was that even coming from? And it really was coming from, it was coming from a good place. I genuinely thought I was fighting the enemy, and I think a lot of those who still identify with the far left are doing that. And I don't want the far left to think that I'm like demonizing them in any way, because they have really good hearts. They're good people. We're all trying to do the right thing. But it was probably around 2021 where I noticed that my Democratic Party started getting fragmented on, I guess, COVID policies and procedures, where a lot of them were actually siding with Republicans. And I thought, well, that's really strange. What's going on here? And so I took a step back, looked at the bigger picture, and then started looking inward at myself and how I was playing a role in all of this. And that's when I realized, shoot, I think I've been propagandized. It felt like a spell, like I was overtaken by something. And I'm a Libra. I'm an extremely diplomatic mediator at heart. I'm a very fair person. The last thing I want to do is be like, pitting people against each other. And that's when I, realized I was being a lot more divisive than unifying. And so I took a step away from the far left. And then I'm still, a Democratic moderate, but because of running and being strategic, I have identified as or re-registered as an NAV, non-affiliated voter, which is a nonpartisan party. But where was I going with that? I guess, what was I going to say? Anyway, I was on a good one.
you where I was like, I got kind of caught up into. Well, so if we do have enough time here, and it's like, if you did want to talk about like what it would be like being an independent in the state legislature. Usually, people go down there with a D or R on their name.
Right.
Have you thought about like what that would be like? I know one of the issues that independents have is like, who do I caucus with?
Right. Yeah. I don't really know how to answer that question because I'm not a political science major.
That's fine.
I don't really have any prior government experience. And that was one of my trepidations of going into this before, some of my local constituents and local politicians tricked me into doing this.
Yeah.
But I told them that those were my trepidations. And they said, Austin, don't even worry about that. Because if you just look at the people who are currently in office, they have that prior experience. They have that, the political science major kind of background. But society is still falling apart under their rule.
Great
and I was
answer.
like, okay, and I don't want to compare myself to Donald Trump by any means, but that's probably the worst possible analogy, but he became president despite not really having that experience. And so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it just, having a fresh set of eyes and, we talked to, I talked to Keith Wilson a little bit about that also. And I do think overall, like viewers and voters are very frustrated with the status quo.
Yeah.
And so they are looking for fresh ideas. And, part of the benefit of being in the legislature is like, you're kind of creating a team. And with a team, everybody has different strengths and weaknesses,
right?
And so if somebody had their strength is fresh ideas, well, maybe hang out with somebody that understands like the procedure part of how like the government is administrative would be a really strategic alliance to have. So I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's just knowing yourself, knowing your strengths and your limits. And
well, I remember what I was going to say actually. Because I'm a Libra, I'm all about trying to get people to get along. I really miss the Democrats of 8+ years ago, especially back when we had the Occupy Wall Street movement. At that time, there was another movement with the Republicans, which was the Tea Party movement. And that's one of the first times both movements on both the left and the right actually aligned on something that really like stuck it to the man, tax the top rich, the top 1%, like unite the 99%. And that really frustrated the people in the top 1% because we were finally coming together as one and really trying to get the ones who were responsible for like pulling the strings on everything. And they didn't like that. And so what they ended up doing, the top 1%, is they discredited all of us. They basically smeared us as being uneducated and not really understanding government or how the world works or economics. And they did a pretty good job of dismantling both movements and then following it up with a lot of divisive propaganda that became this like binary of us versus them, like left versus right, man versus woman, gay versus straight, cis versus trans, Israel versus Palestine, vaccinated versus unvaccinated, pro-life, pro-choice. And now we're all just fighting each other again. And I think that there are a lot of demographics out there who don't really identify with that type of binary. They're like in the middle. We're just all moderates in every demographic, and we don't make enough noise politically. We're the people who like represent us. Like, unfortunately, the far left tend to make the most noise politically, and then the moderate Democrats, they don't really say much because we're just pretty quiet and mature and
just want to live their lives.
Yeah, we just want, you know,
really
everyone stay in their lane.
much.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And unfortunately, we moderates don't get a ton of representation. And what's really refreshing to me is that when I've been speaking with the Democrats in my House district, about 90 to 95% of them, people that I meet at the dog park or at the park down the street from my house, they agree with me. We all feel like we're bait and switched. Like, we all voted on policies that inadvertently actually worsened crime and homelessness and addiction when we thought we were doing the progressive, passionate thing in solving them. But it was kind of like, you know, they were failed experiments that eventually debunked themselves. And what we're noticing is there's still a lot of people currently in politics or running who they don't see it that way. They see things like, well, this is actually a reflection of the times, and these policies, which again debunked themselves, need more time. And that's going to be at the expense of all of us. And so my neighbors who are kind of fed up with it, they're still Democrats. And it's like the message that I want people to get across is, it doesn't make you less of a Democrat or less of a liberal to put your foot down every once in a while and say that, you know what, these things have gone too far. Let's like either revert back to the way they were or just try something a bit more nuanced, you know, put some amendments out there to the current measures. Like, for instance, Measure 110, I voted in favor of Measure 110, and I'm guilty of that. And it ended up, you know, worsening a fentanyl crisis. We all thought that if you compare it to Portugal, that like, yay, well, actually, Portugal is a really small country, and it's, you know, it's not divided by 50 states, and it's federalized. And so they had the infrastructure for treatment, which we didn't actually have here. You know, the Oregon Health Authority, they had their hands tied by a thing called Certificate of Need, which actually blocked their ability to implement or approve the implementation and operation of brand new treatment facilities in Oregon. So our infrastructure is actually the worst in the entire country. We are 50th, dead last in access to treatment. And I didn't know that. None of the voters who voted in favor of Measure 110 knew that. But if you read Measure 110, it promised that we would be giving drug addicts treatment, and that didn't end up happening. And so we all feel kind of bait and switched, but what is it? House Bill 4002 was an amendment to that. Mm-hmm. It recriminalizes hard drugs, not things like psilocybin or cannabis, but and that's a step in the right direction. But even our criminal justice system, the corrections, has their hands tied, because if you see the way that they're handling crimes right now, like for instance, there's this incident where the person who had burned down the Portland garment factory out in the Montevilla neighborhood, she is probably on her 9th or 10th arrest warrant right now, because what happens is when you commit a crime, you get taken in, you're booked only so that they can have your information, and they set your trial date, and then they pretty much release you back onto the street without bail if you can't afford it. If you can't afford bail, I think it's something like $25, something like really easy. But either way, criminals are going back out onto the street without much consequence and without really any incentive to show up to their trial date. And so they don't show up to their trial date. There's a failure to appear, and then there's a warrant out for their arrest. And then it just becomes this perpetual cycle of getting arrested, booked, you know, and just being put back out on the street again. And it's kind of embarrassing, because now you have this person who, you know, she's an addict, she's homeless, she has mental health issues, she hasn't gotten any of the services that she needs. And she's still wandering the streets with a pellet gun, shooting neighbors and making people, threatening to shoot neighbors, and cussing at them. And it's a really sad situation. And I think we can really do better for her. There need to be some sort of consequences or discipline or mental health services or, you know, addiction services for her. And then when it comes to like the homelessness issue, we can't treat all homeless like they're the same. All homeless people need to be correctly categorized and triaged in a correct manner where they're all given the needs that they have, because all the different categories have completely different needs. And so I've been networking with Ben West over at he's the Multnomah County Commissioner, who he's successfully diminished the homeless population by rehabilitating 65% of them. So they're down to 35%, which is really incredible.
Clackamas County, right?
Clackamas County.
Yes.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said Multnomah.
Oh, just kidding.
Okay.
Just kidding. Clackamas. I'm on a good one right now. And so, so Ben West in Clackamas County has diminished their homeless population by 65%, and that's based off of a model that was set by a gentleman who was succeeding over in Gresham. I guess prior to him single-handedly helping the homeless in Gresham, they were highest homeless rate per capita in Oregon, I think, and now they're the lowest.
Oh, wow.
And he's not working for them anymore, but I'm connected with both Ben West and this gentleman from Gresham, and so I'm really looking forward to collaborating with them on ideas with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that kind of sums up. We kind of bled into the what are your priorities?
Yeah.
But like, so you did share like a huge chunk. But is there any like one specific thing that like, it's very tough as a freshman legislator to go get your own bills passed. But is there any like one priority that you would have once you're elected?
Well, I mean, the three that I mentioned, crime, homelessness, and addiction, they are a gamut. They're kind of interconnected. And when it comes to the survey of Oregonians polled, those are the top three issues that they're the most concerned about. And so those are my top three main issues. But that's also followed by the unaffordability to live, unaffordability to run a business, the new all imposed the like taxes and fees, and then the imposition of potential road tolls, which is put on pause, but that's a pause. That doesn't mean it's not going away forever.
Right.
And a lot of people do not want road tolls. And then also just like the failures in our school system right now, because kids they're failing in reading, writing, and math, and yet we've had the audacity to claim that we are the second highest graduation rate in the country, but that's because we lowered graduation standards, and I think that's not really something to brag about.
It's a tricky situation. I read that we're in the top 5 in absentee rate, and it's like, well, yeah, I wouldn't have gone to school either if I knew I didn't have to take any test or get graded. So besides money, how can voters help you? It sounds like since you're you're running with the support of the independent party, but you don't have like the traditional party supporting your campaign. So it seems like you're going to have to rely a bit on the support of voters and community members. And so how can a voter they can get in contact with you through your website?
Yes,
right.
My website, and Austin for Oregon is my website, but that's also my name on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. My Facebook isn't super active yet. My Instagram has the most content.
Okay.
And to forewarn you, it's compromising because it sort of encourages this same like spiritual epiphany, this sort of waking up that I had when I used to be really associated with the far left. And you kind of have to undo a lot of these ideologies that, got us stuck that far. Otherwise, we're going to still keep pushing the same ideologies and policies that aren't working. And so part of that is exploring that content, but with an open mind and in a way that, you don't get offended by it, because it's very easy when it comes to identity politics to really identify with a cause, because we all have good hearts. We want to do the right thing. The last thing we want to hear is that we're making a huge mistake and that we're wrong. And so as, a Libra and like a diplomatic mediator, and just like in the gentlest way possible, I want to be able to reach people where they're at in a way that doesn't trigger them, where they don't feel like they're being attacked. And that we're just trying to meet in the middle and discuss, here's other solutions as to how these things can be solved. And I understand that, these sort of far left ideologies seem well-intended, but they're not always rooted in actual reality and truth.
Yeah. Outcomes versus ideology. So we've got 15 seconds left on the show. What's your favorite restaurant in your district?
Oh man, I didn't even have time to think about this one. In my district, probably Dick's Primal Burger. So that's on like 50th-ish and Woodstock.
Okay.
Yeah, really high quality meat.